Alright folks, this is Sultan, and as you know, I've been banging on about Keir planning to bring in Islamophobia legislation to the UK very soon. Now, I must admit that there hasn't been any official confirmation from the British government that they are planning to introduce an Islamophobia bill, but it is quite understood that they are, or at least they were. The more noise we make, the less likely they are to proceed, despite the pressure they've been enduring from their Muslim constituencies. Needless to say, the definition they've been trying to adopt would essentially send you and me to prison for simply stating what's in the Quran and Hadith. I don't need to explain the consequences of that. Basically, Islamist propagandists would get to present all the evil things in Islam in a way that makes them seem not so evil. Kind of like this.
I believe the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, married Aisha at 6 and he consummated marriage at 9. I have zero problem with that at all, as long as we understand why that happened and we look into why he married her and so many things about his character. I've spoken to non-Muslims in the park and they've asked me this question. Wallahi, after I've broken it down, they said, that makes sense.
They are essentially telling you that pedophilia is okay, even good and noble. How did we get here? To make matters worse, if you presented this in a negative light, as it should be, you and I could go to prison, but they are allowed to present it in a good light. Imagine what will it do to the psyche of Britain's next generation. What Keir's two-tier justice recently did to the angry British working class people is proof enough that these alarms are not false. They have already set a precedent by sentencing people to up to 7 years in prison for saying mean things on social media. The Islamophobia bill that Keir had been planning to impose on ordinary British people would be the final straw that breaks Britain's back. But don't despair. I've got some good news for you. Thanks to Elon Musk, the UK grooming gang scandal is back in the news. And besides a renewed hope for justice, a pleasant consequence has taken place that may undo all the work the UK government has done to pander to its Muslim population, namely getting an Islamophobia definition on the books. We can largely thank Elon Musk and his X platform for getting the scandal back on front pages as owner of the social media site. He has the most followers, 209.5 million to be exact, and he has the power to not only start conversations, but push topics by retweeting like-minded users. Independent research by the New York Times revealed that engagement with his posts has doubled over the past year. Their analysis showed that he's also posting more often, 504 times in June of 2024 to more than 1,000 times in September. It is said that it is difficult for an ex-user to escape Musk's tweets as he had the algorithm tweaked in his favor. According to Emerson Brooking, an Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab senior fellow, there are fewer and fewer main characters on the platform who are not Musk, and virtually anyone who breaks through is going to be subsumed into Musk's orbit. So how did it start? Musk first turned his attention to the UK in August 2024 when the UK announced that anyone who shared posts about or footage of the Southport riots faced arrest and prosecution. He went directly against the PM, calling him out as Keir.
Yes, several thousand people have been given prison sentences in the UK for social media posts where there was no explicit link to actual violence, but they just said it encouraged violence. I'm like, well, did anyone actually do anything as a result of that media post? Well, no. But they just... And then they have a prison overcrowding situation in the UK, so they're quite literally releasing convicted pedophiles and putting people in jail for Facebook posts. That's an actual thing happening in Britain.
That is so wild.
Like you're like,
it's so wild that people can't see
what the fuck, is going on?
He also warned that civil war is coming, which angered many. In November 2024, Musk came out in support of Tommy Robinson. Why are rapists given suspended sentences in the UK, but this guy gets 18 in solitary confinement despite doing nothing violent? Fair point. He also reposted Tommy's film Silence, which has now got over 150 million views. Musk has called the UK government's response to the grooming gangs the worst mass crime against the people of Britain ever. He called out PM Starmer and Jess Phillips, who is Parliament's Under-Secretary of State for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, who rejected calls for an inquiry by Oldham councillors. An inquiry in the Greater Manchester Combined Authority in 2019 found that vulnerable children were failed. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch upset that the inquiry was rejected and then called for a national inquiry. She wrote on X, "The time is long overdue for a full national inquiry into the gang scandal. Trials have taken place all over the country in recent years, but no one in authority has joined the dots. 2025 must be the year that the victims start to get justice. The Telegraph said that the government's approach to multiculturalism is not to uphold the law, but instead to minimize the risk of unrest between communities. Confronted with gangs of predominantly Pakistani men targeting predominantly white children, the state knew exactly what to do. For the good of community relations, it had to bury the story. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage joined in, saying, "We deserve a full public inquiry. Firstly, the public ought to know how ghastly this has been and how long it's been going on for. Secondly, the cover-up by police, social services. Now it looks like the Director of Public Prosecutions in 2008, our two-tier Keir of course, which has quite big implications at the Conservative government themselves because of the sheer reluctance to debate this for fear of causing community tensions." Reform UK MP Lee Anderson and Chairman Zia Youssef also demanded an inquiry. Musk is not only blowing up the whole affair on X, but has also posted about Shabir Ahmed, who has been accused of leading the gangs in Rochdale while being employed as a welfare rights officer. It's like putting a Nazi in charge of Jewish welfare. Musk has also backed calls for the king to step in and shared that Labour members, including former MP Tony Lloyd, pressured former MP Simon Dankzuk of Rochdale to not link the gangs to the Muslim community. Amid this chaos, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Hunrick said throughout the grooming gang scandal, the false label of Islamophobia was used to silence people. So while this is happening, and the whole world is now watching how Britain will deal with these gangs, on January 4th, the government announced it was continuing to hammer out a formal definition of Islamophobia. Meanwhile, within the Labour Party, they have been using the definition drafted by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on British Muslims. I made a detailed video on that. If you want to understand more about the implications of that definition, check out that video. But anyway, that is bad timing. This is not the time to be talking about Islamophobia or even anti-Muslim hate, especially when the whole world is fixated on these Muslim gangs. Of course, that doesn't mean that every Muslim or every Pakistani is like that. I'm a Pakistani. But this is the time to seek justice for the victims of these so-called grooming gangs. So, the founder of Tell Mama, a group that monitors anti-Muslim hate, Fiaz Mughal, who himself is a Muslim, called the definition adopted by Labour a smokescreen that would curtail free speech. According to Mughal, bad behaviour, wherever it is, in whichever religious group, needs to be called out. This doesn't mean that all Muslims or all Pakistani men are bad, but when there is a concentration of issues within a certain group, we must hold the line in defence of our core values. Such a smart thing to say by someone who is actually an advocate against anti-Muslim hate. That's the kind of people we need. The National Secular Society's chief executive, Stephen Evans, said, conflating criticism of a religion with hatred towards Muslims distorts legitimate dialogue and undermines the vital principle of free expression. Adopting a contentious definition of Islamophobia is more likely to escalate tensions than to address prejudice against religious minorities. Another fair point. Two-tier Keir thinks that by burying these gang scandals, you would somehow protect Muslims from hate is a dumb idea. Faith Minister Lord Khan said in September that Labour's definition went against the Equality Law for calling it a type of racism, but the Equality Act does not mention religion in its definition of race. The Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philip may have put it best when he said, "There is no place for blasphemy laws in the United Kingdom. Free speech is the foundation of our national life, and that includes the freedom to criticize and satirize any and all religions, including Islam." I added including Islam. So things are not going well for our two-tier Keir. It seems like Elon Musk is using his power to its full potential, probably because he knows that he has the backing of the world's most powerful man, Donald Trump. Elon immensely helped Trump in his victory, but that's not where he'll stop. He'll go after the loony left in Canada, in Britain, and even right here in Australia. I hope he does that because we also need to restore common sense in Australia. Our lefty PM Anthony Albanese gave 3,000 protection visas to Gazans, the highest by any country, let alone Western country. Does that clown not know what kind of people could come through? I made a detailed video on that too, check it out. So, well done, Elon. The next 4 years are going to reshape our politics, our norms, and even our culture. I am Harris Sultan. Keep liking and supporting the channel. Until next time, ta-da.